We are back with On the Road of Recovery with Lisa from West Milton. How are you doing today?
Good, thank you.
Thanks so much for coming out and joining us. So can you start off by sharing with us who in recovery you support?
So for me, I have 3 daughters, and it would be my middle daughter.
Okay. And can you talk a bit about the relationship that you've had with your daughter prior to her going into recovery?
That's a hard question because there isn't a relationship. We did have one, and then the enabling on my part continued, which made the relationship go even further south. And then after the enabling and me helping her and paying the bills and doing all the things, we probably didn't speak, and I didn't see her for close to 2 years.
Wow, okay. So can you talk a little bit about what it was like when, prior to her starting to use any drugs or alcohol? What was she like as a kid?
Very outgoing, very energetic, very athletic. She was a leader, not a follower. Had a lot of friends, and was pretty positive. Not saying that she was by far perfect. She's very rambunctious, so she found things she shouldn't have found, but I mean, everything was good until, all that behavior started.
Okay, and when did you first start to notice experimenting with drugs or alcohol?
So with my daughter, and I'll say her name, Sierra, I did not notice because it wasn't until she was in her 20s that she actually started experimenting. She had an injury, and then I think some of that had to do with it, but then she also started experimenting when she met her children's father. He has a long family history of drug abuse, and I think she just fell into that cycle being around them on a daily basis.
Mm-hmm. So when in her life did it start to become a problem?
Probably around 23.
Okay.
She'll be 31 next month, or
Okay.
next week. And I was told that she was using, but never seen it personally.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a mom that just shows up at my kid's house. I don't go unannounced. I don't just knock on the door and show up. So I think by me being that person and giving them the respect that I would want, I never got to see that because she was either not home, didn't answer the phone, or, I couldn't get a hold of her until she was at a point to where it wouldn't be obvious to me if I showed up.
Gotcha. So how did that impact your relationship when she was in the throes of active addiction?
It affected it quite a bit. One, because we were financially trying to take care of her, making sure she was okay. There's children involved.
Mm-hmm.
So that really impacted that their well-being wasn't being taken care of. And then, trying to get different organizations to help us recognize that it wasn't being taken care of, really put a burden on the family and our relationship with her.
Mm-hmm. How did that impact you?
Oh gosh, I become a different person. So I went through a big stint of depression. I went through a huge stint of being angry all the time, not recognizing that I was shutting the family out that was supporting me and trying to help. Not only that, is all my attention was driven towards her and her addiction, that I forgot that I had other children, that I wasn't there for that relationship, and it started putting huge barriers between all of them, even to the point where my other children quit speaking to each other.
Wow.
So it really did take an effect on our family.
Yeah, that sounds like it. And being a grandmother then, how did that affect your relationship with your grandchildren?
That affected because it's hard to show up after the addiction's there and it's, in the moment and that they're using or they're high, knowing that you have to walk away from there because someone tells you you have to. Went through a stint where I took the children and had to give them back because she wasn't deemed unfit, and it was either I give the children back or they ended up somewhere else because I was going to jail.
Right.
So turning them back over was really hard, not knowing who they was around, if they were safe, what was going on with them, and my daughter not knowing if they were safe as well because she was so high.
Right, absolutely. So during any of this time, did you reach out and try to get help for yourself?
No.
Do you have any idea why?
I think because of a mom, you just take the lead and you try to do the best you can. And I think I was raised as you're the strong one. And that's what I've been for the family. I'm always the one that they come to. I'm always the strength of the family. So I couldn't show that. I couldn't let that out. So I think that was part of my problem. I kept building up and building up.
Hmm. And was there much information for you, very many resources about the education piece of addiction, of how to help?
No, and that's one of the things I said is like before I knew, I mean, we all know what drugs are, we all know what the substances are, but as far as it being an actual disease, I was one of those people that said, I don't get it, just quit. It can't be that hard. Just don't touch it anymore. And why did you even start doing it? So I was one of those moms. And then when I decided that I needed to get education myself, I started seeking out things. Went back and got my counseling license. Started being educated on what the actual brain does within the substances and the disease, because I needed to understand why she just couldn't and what I could do to help.
Can you maybe share a little bit of what you learned?
As far as the addiction piece itself,
Yeah.
One of the things that I always hear is you made a choice. And you're correct. We all make choices, whether it be one that you actually done on your own or whether it's actually one that someone helped you decide to do. So learning how it affects the brain, how it hijacks the brain. And one of the things that I always tell people is my daughter bought a one-way ticket to Hawaii without a return. And that's exactly the life that I felt we was living when she started in her addiction. I didn't know that there was the counseling piece, the behavior, just giving them the tools and the education themselves, and then finding out at what point and what trauma, because she was raised the same as my other children, what had happened and what I didn't know about, and then blaming yourself. So yeah, the education piece really helped understanding how it hijacks, what the emotions are, what they need to go through, what they actually need to be successful, but most of all, wanting to be successful.
So has she had some periods of sobriety?
She has.
Okay. And how does that feel?
Excellent. So, let me see, 3 years ago, at Christmas, that was probably the best Christmas I've had my entire life. That was the first time that I had my daughter, my other children, my family, my husband, my parents, and all of my grandchildren together in the house for a Christmas dinner, and that we all got along and there was sobriety and we had something to celebrate on. So it was great. It was just like, wow, this is what we're supposed to be doing. So yeah.
Can you talk about how you've now managed your relationships with your other children and with your other family members?
So educating them.
Okay.
I actually have, my oldest daughter is in the addiction field now. That kind of drove her to this field, just like because I do the same thing. My son kind of got an understanding by us talking to him. Now my youngest daughter maybe not be on the same page. She gets very upset when we talk about her sister or her addiction, and I think one of the reasons why is me as the grandmother and her as the sister, we are raising this daughter's children. We've both had custody of her boy and her girl since Chrissa's 5 and now she's 10, so I've had her for 5 years.
Wow. So your daughter has no custody of either of the children?
No, none.
And what strain does that put on your relationship with your daughter?
It's a little hard, but I think when she becomes sober, she understands her boundaries, and that Carissa lives with me and not her, and that people raise their children differently. I definitely raise Carissa differently than what she would, so she's respecting my boundaries now.
That's good. So through these ups and downs, what do you think that you struggle with the most?
The want, her wanting to stay sober, because it's obviously she's capable. She's got the education, she's got the tools, she has the intelligence to, believe me, to do anything she wants to do. It's just, she surrounds herself with such negative people Even people that's not suffering from, the disease of addiction, just negative people that just don't care. And I think I'm struggling with the drama. There
Yes.
always has to be drama in her life, and it drives me absolutely crazy. That I think, and just knowing that today's good, but what's tomorrow's going to be like. So you always think that you're always on edge.
So you do seem to have a sense of peace about you and some acceptance. I'm sure that's not every day, but how do you work towards that, having peace? Because you are raising her daughter. You do have other children. How do you have acceptance or peace?
I think knowing that we have provided her with every tool and support. It's unconditional love with us. I would never turn my back on her completely, and she always knows that I'm here, but knowing that she has what she needs and she's able to continue down this path kind of puts me at peace. And then I guess I'm kind of living through my granddaughter too. I feel like maybe, we didn't have a perfect life growing up. We weren't rich. I was a single mom for a long time raising my children. And I feel like maybe I have a second chance. I know that sounds terrible.
No.
But just trying to give her an opportunity of maybe something I missed with my own kids.
And you had said earlier on that you had enabled your daughter. What did that look like?
Oh, it looked like a financial mess. Oh gosh, so paying the rent, buying the kids clothes, paying her utilities. I quit giving her money when I realized that you've got to quit doing this. You are allowing her to continue down that path. Just whatever I had to do to make sure that the kids had a safe environment, or at least what they needed. And then to realize that was enabling her by doing that, because when Children's Services finally got involved and did their welfare checks, they had everything they needed. So in their eyes, there was nothing wrong. And that was one of the questions I said, but I'm doing this.
Right.
I'm providing this. And their exact words to me, well, then you need to stop. Because until you do that, they have what they need.
Man, that is a double-edged sword. That is a tough spot to be in.
That was real hard.
Yeah.
That was real hard, knowing that when I stopped, that her and the kids was probably going to be homeless, living in the back of a car, which they did do. The kids with them, when they're dope seeking. Just not knowing.
Yeah.
And then, find out that she's going to have another baby, which she did.
Yeah.
But she was sober during that, so.
That's great. So when you think about the effects that it's had on your grandchildren, what have you done to be able to help them deal with their feelings?
So we definitely reinforce positivity. We make sure that they have all the love that they need, but yet we keep them structured. So in the beginning, it was a little rough because they were crazy off the hook. Like, behavior was terrible. But giving them that structure, giving them that discipline, I think was probably the best thing we ever done, because that shows that we love them. It shows that we care about them. And then counseling, both of the children. We had them in trauma-informed counseling, because they've probably seen more than most adults.
Right. And that's so vital. I mean, a lot of people have talked about trauma that they had experienced and nobody did anything. So being able to help those kids get that, there's really good counseling today.
Yes.
for kids that need it.
Absolutely.
Can you describe a little bit of when you feel like, what it feels like when your daughter is in recovery and doing well, what that feels like for you and your family?
We hit the lottery. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah.
It couldn't be any better, because they get along so well when she's sober. Their personalities, I call them my 4 seasons, because they have different personalities, but yet they're the same. It's just watching the support with them. When she's sober and they're doing things, I've never seen more support with siblings, ever. They would go to bat for anything for each other.
Do you feel like your other 3 children, do you feel like they have a pretty good understanding of not enabling and and at the same time unconditional. Obviously, you talked about the support. Do you think they understand that concept of not enabling now?
They didn't enable her to begin with. It was all mom.
Okay.
And that was
Gotcha.
part of the problem, because I think they felt like I was doing everything for her, and that if they needed me, I couldn't be there.
Right, right. And there, I mean, probably some of that is true, and also at the same time, you were trying to do the best you can.
Correct.
So, what would you say if you were, if she was sitting here right now today, because you said she's been sober for about 6 months, what would you say to her as some words of hope and inspiration to continue down this path?
I love you. I don't get like this anymore. I'm proud of you.